With so much emphasis on training the lower body in weightlifting, the muscles that support the bar overhead can often be overlooked and often have little consideration when it comes to programming. In today's video, we discuss key accessory movements for weightlifting that I use in my own training and that I also use with lifters that I work with. But before we get any further, to provide some context around the movements that we're using and the ones that I've selected today, these are the movements that work best when someone is in season and when they're focusing primarily on weightlifting. So they'll be accumulating quite a lot of fatigue from the snatch and clean and jerk, and these are the accessories that blend well into a program like that. That being said, however, these movements will work at almost every phase in the program or at any phase in your training, and they can be adjusted depending on the volume and intensity that you're going to be using based on the stimulus that you're after. The first movement that we're going to be talking about is the push press. Now, you might be surprised to hear the push press as an accessory, or maybe you are not surprised by that, but regardless, the push press can be an excellent movement to add into your training as an upper body accessory movement. And whilst there are some benefits to be made in upper body pressing strength, I would usually programming this at a lower intensity as it allows for you to focus on performing a powerful dip and drive and work on the skill of this technique, which translates well to the jerk. If someone is pressing early with their arms or coming onto their toes early, the push press can be a highly effective way to improve their technique and the skill of the weightlifting movements. You can implement this exercise into your training as a primer before you start your heavy split jerks or before you start clean and jerks, or you can program this exercise completely separate from your clean and jerk days so that you can reduce total fatigue on your body. The second movement we're talking about is chin-ups and dips. Now, I've paired these two together because I find that they can be worked well and performed as a superset, but you can also program these and perform these on separate days to manage your overall fatigue. Pull-ups can be a great exercise to promote scapular movement and strengthen your biceps, shoulders, and back. And if you're quite strong at these, performing weighted variations can also be effective. For most lifters, I implement pull-ups since they do not have access to a lat pull-down. A lat pull-down, however, can be equally, if not more effective, due to the ability to manage load and therefore fatigue much easily, especially for beginners or heavier lifters who do not have the necessary strength to perform a number of reps on pull-ups or weighted variations. If you have access to machines as a weightlifter, as I have spoken about previously, these are extremely useful and I would recommend everyone use them if they have access. Tricep dips are also an effective way of building the strength to perform a strong lockout in a snatch or jerk by developing your triceps and shoulders. If you are working on dips, I recommend focusing on achieving a full range of motion and having control in this range before adding weight to them. The reason why I've chosen dips versus a bench press with a barbell is because we can achieve a deeper range that isn't limited by the barbell, which will load more tissues. For weightlifters, strengthening these muscles is important for good shoulder health as we are constantly going overhead most sessions and can be programmed for hypertrophy. If you are someone who struggles with pull-ups and dips, I suggest performing a regression that allows you to accumulate more volume and practice, or separating them so you can manage your fatigue and allow you to progress these exercises separately. If you are performing the weighted variations of either of these movements, chin-ups, pull-ups, or dips, however you like to explain chin-ups or pull-ups, then just make sure you don't get too carried away when you're performing these movements in your program. If your goal is to focus on improving your weightlifting total, then you want to try and manage your fatigue as best as you can, and managing the load in this area, or in this instance, is going to be probably the easiest way to go about doing it. The third movement is a behind the neck press. Now, a behind the neck press is probably one of the most programmed movements, especially for beginners, when it comes to improving their overhead strength and just their general awareness of where to put the bar overhead. I mainly use this exercise as a means of teaching new lifters where the bar needs to be overhead, which is particularly useful for someone learning an overhead squat or wanting to progress to a snatch balance or a pressing snatch balance. It can be added into warm-ups quite easily, but also programmed for strength. Since most lifters who are in a weightlifting prep are accumulating a lot of fatigue from the snatch and clean and jerk, I usually keep this movement on the lower intensity to manage fatigue. When performing this movement, I recommend starting with a closer grip and gaining some awareness of where you are in space. Once this feels comfortable, moving to a snatch grip position will feel better as you have some control with the barbell. The last movement is bicep curls and tricep extensions. Now, I wanted to add in a little side note talking about single joint movements and how I often think they're a little bit overlooked in weightlifting programs, at least the ones that I see in my area, but I think they're something that can be of really good use to weightlifters regardless of prep. From a programming perspective, these are low fatigue movements and offer a hypertrophy stimulus that are easy to complete after a hard session of weightlifting. The contrast between mentally draining weightlifting movements, which are high skill, and simple low skill movements like these is what makes them most attractive to me when I'm adding them into people's training programs or my own sessions. If accessories become complex and difficult to complete, it is unlikely that they will even be performed. I often find that most weightlifters don't train arms at all, but there are definitely some benefit to strengthening the muscles that support and attach near the shoulder. These are the upper body movements that I thought would be useful to go over, and they're the ones that I program most of the time. There are obviously ones that I missed and the ones that I didn't talk about today, but if you have any questions for anything else that you would like me to cover, or any of the exercises that you would normally use in the program, for example, a single arm row or a bent over row or a pendlay row, for example, I'm happy to discuss that further in the comments. Let me know what you guys like to use in your own training, and I'd be really interested to talk about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.